Powerhouse podcast. I'm your host, Brian Harman, President and CEO of the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation. And I'm joined by a special co-host today, Miss Cassie Franklin. Cassie, welcome.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. We got rave reviews after your Women in Science podcast you did a couple months ago. The people have spoken. Bring back Cassie. Don't tell Dr. Phil. He hasn't lost his co-hosting duties, but we thought it'd be important to have you join us for today's call.
Well, I appreciate that so much. Yeah.
Well, and we didn't really get a chance to dive a whole lot last time on when you hosted with Nicole Wilson from our staff. You guys got right into the program, which I really appreciated. But I want our listeners to learn a little bit more about Cassie today as well, too, because Cassie has one of the most important jobs at UMDF. All of our jobs are important when we're doing the good work that we're aiming to do. But Cassie's title here is Community Engagement Specialist. So Cassie, tell the people a little bit about what a community engagement specialist does at a place like UMDF.
Oh gosh. Well, as a community engagement specialist, it's probably I've been with UMDF since 2012.
Yeah.
But this has probably been my favorite role. I think, Brian, when you came on into the organization, you learned this early on that I really enjoy storytelling and connecting just with our patient community. So since being in this role as the community engagement specialist, that's my whole job is to connect with families, help learn their stories, and help amplify, elevate that story, just to help build community, build connection, move the mission forward.
Well, it's a nice pitch for all of our listeners to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the social medias, those great posts you see, the frequent communication out to our community. Cassie's behind a lot of that work. And as Cassie, as you mentioned, it's all centered around stories, right? When I came here, I kind of made the joke about it. I'm putting a little bit of a ban on pictures of the mitochondria. I want more pictures of the kids and the adults and the families that this organization is not just supporting, but that this organization is driven by. And I know that's part of what makes your day so special every day, is that opportunity to learn those stories from patient families. And certainly for me, it creates a moment to be inspired every day and to acknowledge the grind that these families are on, but also the incredible resolve that they all have to help us move our mission forward.
Absolutely. I mean, working especially with our social media, pushing out all of this, we at UMDF, we do such great work. We're pushing out that information all the time, but it's really, we get the most engagement and connection and people sharing when we're sharing out our stories, stories of our patients, of our caregivers, of parents who've loved and lost, siblings. Those stories are really what people connect with, what resonates with people, what they remember, and what motivates them to get involved in the cause.
Very well put. There's so many commonalities in the stories that we hear, but there's so much uniqueness as well, too. And we're going to get to that here in a little bit with our special guest. One place that we are always sharing stories and learning more and connecting is our world-class mitochondrial medicine symposium, again, being held this year at the end of June. You can learn more at umdf.org and register to be part of MitoMed, be held in Charlotte, North Carolina this year. And I'm excited as there's some new efforts this year at MitoMed, the launch of a brand new research pavilion. We don't have a fancy name for it yet, Cassie, but that's part of your job too. I always go to Cassie and say, hey, come up with some creative ideas for me this week. We are going to have a research pavilion. What this really is our opportunity to activate the patient community in research. We have patient families who come to us and say, I want to be a part of research. I want my voice to be heard. I want to be part of coming up with the solution. And we're bringing that to Symposium this year with a couple new projects, one around motor skills assessment, a video assessment project. Of course, our MitoShare patient registry will be a big part of what we do at Symposium this year. And Cassie, as it has been for, my gosh, nearly 25 years, Symposium, which you've been to many symposia, is always a place for families, clinicians, researchers to come together and share stories. Tell me a little about just some of your experiences of seeing that over the year.
Oh gosh, symposium is just as in the community and the research that's changed in the last 10 years since I've been here. Symposium is always changing too. So I would recommend, whether you're just entering into the community or you've maybe been in the community for 20 years, if you are near enough to a symposium to attend in person, it's worth it to do that. The community is always changing. The research is always changing, but that unique and really special experience of the researchers and clinicians being there in person with the patients' families and caregivers, hearing their stories, meeting them, learning about their everyday, that's what makes our symposium experience, our conference experience, different from any other conference that I've ever been to.
Well, so much is spent on keeping this meeting relevant and new and exciting, but always acknowledging that there's many different families at different points on their mitochondrial disease journey. And symposium is just one of those moments for our organization to bring families together, bring researchers together to continue to share. Well, speaking of sharing and storytelling, we are in the middle of a very exciting spring fundraising campaign. As so many of our listeners know, I am a no shame fundraising CEO. It is critically important to the work that we do that we generate much needed dollars to fund research, to provide programming like Symposium. And at the center of those fundraising efforts every year are families who step up and say, I want to share my story. I want to put my story to work to help this organization move its mission forward. And we're always so grateful for patient families in doing that. And it brings us to our special guest today to talk a little bit more about our spring fundraising campaign, her mitochondrial disease journey, her story. I told her if she's a black belt in Taekwondo, I want to know that too. So who knows what we'll learn today about our special guest, Emma Watt. Emma joins us from Denver, Colorado today in the Powerhouse. Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Not a Taekwondo specialist, black belt, whatnot. My husband is a karate Shotokan black belt.
Oh, goodness. I had no idea.
A little bit of that valor.
It's not a silly sample then. Okay. So we'll come back as the conversation progresses. Again, we might learn something very interesting about you, but there's so much for us to learn and for our listeners to hear today, Emma. And first and foremost, we want to thank you for joining us, and allow me to thank you for sharing your family story for our spring fundraising appeal. And maybe we could kick off there a little bit and just tell us a little bit about the Watt family.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a fun journey to be doing the spring fundraising appeal. As far as our family, I could give you the 2-hour version or the more appropriate podcast version. So we live in Denver, Colorado. We have 2 beautiful children, my husband and I, Elizabeth, who's 19 years old, and then our almost 14-year-old going on 45, very wise daughter, Allison. And our oldest daughter, who is 19, is the child who has PDCD, or young adult now. And PDCD is the mitochondrial disease that she has been diagnosed with.
So I want to dive into a little bit about PDCD and your mito journey, and talk about Elizabeth and the kind of whole family approach to mitochondrial disease, and maybe take us back there a little bit of when you heard that diagnosis. My gosh, I still have trouble pronouncing PDCD. That's why I love calling PDCD, because pyruvate dehydrogenase complex deficiency is a tough one.
So close. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've talked to so many moms and dads who've had those late night Google sessions, and that initial this moment. Take us back to that time from diagnosis, if you would, please.
Yeah, of course. It is difficult to go back to that time, I think, but it's important, because I think putting myself back in that space when I meet new families, it's important for me to be able to empathize with what they're going through, just remembering kind of just the darkness that fell over our entire family that day. Elizabeth was born a completely, what we thought, a typical newborn. She was our first child, so we didn't have any concerns. A completely normal pregnancy. She was born on a very small Army base in Missouri, very limited medical care. We didn't think we would need it. We were just going to go off into the sunset and live our beautiful life with our daughter. She started really developing some concerns. We didn't know they were concerns because we were new parents, and she was crying all the time. She wasn't holding her head up, which I thought babies were just floppy, which is a silly thing, but I think we tend to want to believe the positive, and we don't want to think that there's something wrong. So I kind of lived in that blissful ignorance for a couple of months until a resident who just happened to be passing through the hospital noticed that she wasn't meeting her milestones and kind of began our journey down that path. It was a long journey, as many, of course, mitochondrial diagnosis are. We received a couple of different diagnoses, none of them good necessarily, before our final diagnosis when she was 18 months old. That was an interesting, her final diagnosis day, I remember, of course, very well. She was very sick. She ended up in the ICU. She had a respiratory illness and pneumonia. It was horribly coincided with the fact that I took my very first nursing job that month. I had graduated with my nursing degree, 6 months prior to that, or maybe a few months more than that. And had been looking for work. We had recently relocated to Texas. It was a whole thing. And so she was in the ICU. My husband and I were taking turns of being with her during the day, where I would work during the day, and then I would spend the night with her at night. And then, we trade off there. And I'll never forget, I had gone through the hospital orientation. And then my second day on the floor, when you're trying to be kind of like important and professional, like my new job, and I want to impress all my coworkers and my boss and all of that. And my husband called me, and back then, of course, it was 2005. I didn't have a cell phone. They called the hospital directly and asked to speak with me, which is never a good thing when you get a phone call in the middle of work. And it was my husband on the other end of the line, and he just said, "We have a diagnosis." And of course, it was something that my heart jumped. I was very excited initially because we have a diagnosis, and I had always said, you can't fight the monster you can't see, right? You can't fight the monster in the closet. So I really wanted to know what was going on with my child. Again, still part of me wanting to live in that blissful ignorance.
Right.
Nothing's actually wrong. I can just pretend it is just a benign, she's going to catch up. Everybody tells you she's going to catch up. She's going to be fine. So in that moment, I was excited, but also dreading what was coming next. My husband was upset. He couldn't talk to me anymore. So he put the doctor on the line, and he said that we had a diagnosis, and then he told me what it was, which was pyruvate dehydrogenase complex deficiency, which is funny because it was one of the illnesses that Google and I had decided she might have had, months earlier. But again, because it had a poor outcome, I erased it from any possibilities. And so I recognized it, and my world completely crashed down in that very, very second. I no longer had any hope. I no longer had any future. Everything just went black. And I don't even know any other way to describe it other than a cloud, like a really dark storm cloud, just sort of hovered over everything that I did. And, eventually I was able to go to the hospital to be with her. I worked with some amazing people. Shout out University Hospital in San Antonio, and all the people who helped me there. And they were so kind, and they let me have some time off. And even being a new nurse, to go be with her and kind of learn about the diagnosis. And of course, I spent weeks just wallowing and so sad because we were told, that day, her life expectancy was very poor. It was 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 if we were lucky. And she was already 18 months. And so,
she was 18 months at diagnosis.
Yeah.
You were told 2 years.
2 years. Yeah. For not.
And we've already shown the picture today.
Yeah. Yeah.
How old is Elizabeth today?
She's 19 and amazing. Yeah. And she has weathered so much. Yeah. And every year after that, it's a long story. 19 years is a long journey for any mom, but yeah.
We're going to get into that as well too.
Yeah.
So it was interesting as I saw Cassie and I writing down something the exact same time. When you talk about the darkness took over, right? Yeah. And wow, just what a moving statement. I can already tell, like Cassie and I are both thinking like that's the realness that we're dealing with here. And you started to allude to a little bit about coming out of the darkness. And I'm not suggesting it's always coming completely out of the darkness, but talk to us a little bit about your moments of finding a path, finding peace, kind of what you did as a family to set yourself up to come to more light.
That's a great question. I think, after the first few weeks of despair and just grief, you have to go someplace, right? And so since Google and I were such good friends, we were able to find some doctors that would help us. And I think just finding people who knew what you were going through and knew directions to tell you. We weren't being told any better news, but we were being told that people knew what we were going through. And I searched, I scoured for any amount of hope that I can find. And it just happens that I found a little story, a news story about a little girl in Australia with PDCD. And remember, the internet in 2005, while fantastic, wasn't what it is now, right? There was no social media. There was no way to connect with anybody. And it happened to be a newspaper story. Remember newspapers? It happened to be a newspaper story from Australia. And it was about this little girl named Gabby. And she had PDCD, which already my heart was fluttering because there's another little girl. And I think she was 6 at the time. And just knowing that she was 6 years old was already giving me hope because then I have a way to push away that 2 to 3 years and say, I can go forward. We can do this. She did it. We can do it. And then happenstance, I used to come home from my shift on Sundays and we would watch a little show called Mystery Diagnosis. I don't know if you remember that one on TLC.
Yeah.
Big medical nerds and reality TV nerds. And we watched the story of the Salems. And it was about a little boy who had the exact same, we didn't know that diagnosis, but same symptoms as Elizabeth. And there on my TV screen was pyruvate dehydrogenase complex deficiency.
Wow.
And he was, I think, 10 or 11 at the time. And I'll never forget his mom. And we're good friends now. But I'll never forget his mom said something that absolutely changed the trajectory of how I think about it, which was, Alex is happy and he has friends. And in that moment, nothing else mattered to me. It didn't matter to me. And I made a promise. I told you, Brian. I made a promise to Elizabeth. I did not care if she ever walked. I'll be her legs. I did not care if she ever spoke. I'll be her voice. I just want her to be happy and I just want her to have friends because it changed my life too. I no longer did care about ambition and, getting forward and how many people liked you and all of those things. It's just about being happy. And it just really set everything kind of in a more focused way for us as a family. And then
I want to make sure we come back to happiness, right? I think it's Cassie, this is a theme we hear with the pleasure we have of connecting with so many different patient families, right? We hear about the grind and the darkness and charting a course, and we're going to dive a little bit more, but Cassie, maybe just kind of comment a little bit on the common themes we hear from patient families with what we're hearing here from Emma.
Gosh, when you said, I don't care if she ever walks, I'll be her legs, and I don't care if she ever talks, I'll be her voice. You're not the first mom that we've talked to that said that. Being a voice for her, gosh, it's just, that's what so many of our patient families are experiencing, whether they're being a voice for their child or their spouse or partner, maybe their adult child even. So that one I wrote down because it's just so perfectly said. And then earlier when you said you can't fight the monster you can't see. Yeah. I have that one written down exactly verbatim.
Right here. Number 2, monster you can't see.
I mean,
it's true though.
How many patient families do we talk to? Some that are still waiting on a diagnosis, waiting on a genetic confirmation, who are going through that journey and are just looking to feel part of a community, to be heard, not to feel alone.
Yes.
there are so many unexpected and unknowns in their life, and they're looking for a place to be.
Yeah.
So it just all of those things really resonated with me as you were talking.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah.
We talk quite a bit about elevating voice, and it happens in so many different ways, right? Certainly, the pressure is on to be an advocate for your own child or yourself as you're battling mitochondrial disease. And we've had so many brave patient families step up and use their voice to elevate the voices of all, right? Whether that's starting their own foundations or, some exciting news for us. We have a patient listening session with the
Yeah.
FDA on PDCD on September 8th of this year. I know we'll be engaging you and your family. But talk to me a little bit about that. As I think about what you've done with your own foundation, your own efforts to connect with other families, to take this beyond the Watt family
Mhm.
and channel this energy to raise the voice for so many others. I'd love just to hear about your experiences in that.
Yeah, I think that anytime our community is amazing. And, I kind of had a Freudian slip there. I almost call them family, but that's really what they
Yeah.
are. They, our community is family. And I've never experienced in my life such a group of people who are so dedicated and so focused. And yes, we started our own foundation to help fund research, but we're not the only ones.
Mhm.
That's what's great about it. There are several other ones who are funding research in other areas, which has been amazing to work together, because it takes all, right? We are doing different things, but at the end of the day, we all love our family member with PDCD, and we want to help them, and we want to be that voice and advocate for them. But we want to advocate for each other too. I just want to throw that out there. That's a really big thing, and I'm going to get back to the FDA because that's huge.
Yeah.
But I think that with the advent of social media and with being able to connect to so many people within our community, what I really hope is happening, and I feel it on my end, is just being able to support each other. The mito diagnosis you guys alluded to is very lonely. Our family members can't even pronounce, much less spell. I mean, it is every alphabet letter that we have, but Elizabeth's diagnosis, much less describe what it is. And that's okay. But we also need a space where we don't really even need to say anything. We can say, I'm having a bad day today, and somebody can support us. Or, hey, my daughter's in the hospital. What is this about? And somebody can support us or be a source of information for us. And I think part of what is so exciting about the FDA listening session, it's just very exciting that the government even wants to hear patient voices is a huge deal. I mean, it can feel like you're screaming into the void sometimes, like somebody help us,
Yeah.
And you don't know who's listening, and you don't know which direction to go to get help. And we've already seen such advancements in treatment and research for PDCD in the past 10, 15 years. I really feel like there's some momentum, and I'm hoping that the FDA kind of feels that too, and kind of feels the excitement that our families are really engaged, the patients are really engaged. I feel like this is a time that we can all kind of work together and be the voice for good. And honestly, like any research or any drug repurposing or new novel treatments and research or treatment and modalities, anything like that, to me, and I'm not a scientist, I'm just a nurse and a mom, but it has such great implications, snowball implications, right, for mitochondrial disease. What could help 10% of mito kids now could help 60, 70, 80%, just with the science moving forward. And I'm really hoping that through the listening session, we can, just kind of work together, just they can become part of our community. We can become part of their community.
That's right.
And we can work together for that good. So
it's so important as we're charting this course towards developing treatments. A big piece of that for the FDA is showcasing the burden of this disease. And, it's one thing for Brian Harman, CEO of UMDF, to be on stage talking about it. it's a much more meaningful thing for
Yeah.
the patient families who are on this grind to be sharing that with these regulators. And I can say it's with working with the FDA on previous listening sessions and drug development meetings, it's sincere in their
Yes.
want to understand. And it's not done without the bravery and support and the voice of those patient families. So if anyone's listening who is having that moment like you did, Emma, of watching Mystery Diagnosis or randomly Google, and all of a sudden you're making this connection, please connect with us at umdf.org to learn more about the listening session as well, too.
Yes.
I want to go back to happiness, right? I
Okay.
think it's a nice way to kind of
Favorite topic.
turn a different page here, right? We
Yeah.
talked about coming out of the darkness, and we talked about, the kind of the initial shock and that the panicked parent. I think a lot about when we market our organization, we think a lot about the panicked parent. Like, what does that panicked parent need from us when they're looking up umdf.org at midnight from the next morning from a diagnosis? But what we also try to do is provide that big organizational hug and help promote happiness as well, too. So let's talk a little bit about Elizabeth. Let's talk about happiness. What makes Elizabeth happy?
Making me unhappy. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, she's 19 years old.
Yeah,
Come on.
she's a teenager.
Sure.
I know. I think that, sometimes, again, much to her sister's chagrin, I look at Elizabeth, like all of her disobedience, as just charming, as opposed to, when my other teenager does it. What makes Elizabeth happy? Elizabeth really loves to be with people. She loves chaos. She loves very loud, noisy areas. She loves to trip people. She likes to watch people fall, pratfalls. Three Stooges is kind of like how our baseline here in the house. We do a lot of pratfalling and pretend fighting.
Are you Larry, Curly, or Mo? This is the interesting thing we're learning about you today, I guess.
Obviously, Mo.
Okay, you're Mo.
Clearly. Yeah, she loves it. It's hilarious. She loves to play games, be read to. She loves books. Like any teenager, her device, right? Like she YouTubes. She likes the ASMR videos on YouTube, which I didn't even know was a thing. So that's fun because that's on repeat, as well as game shows. But I think mostly Elizabeth just likes to be with her peers. She doesn't want to hang out with a 48-year-old mom. She will push me away quite physically, and she prefers to be with her friends at school, which again is just a dream come true for, from her mom. I love that. Yeah, she's a really happy kid, like adult. I'm sorry. I know. I'm still getting used to it. But
I'm 43 and my mom still calls me a kid too.
Yeah.
So.
Anyone younger than me.
Right.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, she's happy.
You alluded to earlier, what makes you happy is seeing Elizabeth happy.
course.
But I do want to talk a little bit too, just about, and maybe this is just some sage advice for other moms and dads who are on this journey about, what you have found to take care of yourself through a journey like this. And, outside of what makes us all happy is seeing our kids happy. What are some things that you do or advice you would share to other mito moms on this journey for taking care of their kids and themselves?
I mean, I think it changes. I think the advice I would have given myself in the beginning would be very different from the advice I'd give myself now. I think my advice in the beginning would be, you're going to be okay. You will. And I think I've spoken with Cassie about this before. Like, you will feel joy again. I promise. It's not going to look the same. You're not that person anymore. And that's okay. But you will feel that happiness again, and you will find yourself laughing for no reason. I think my advice would be to find the joy in all the little things, which is similar to the advice I would give myself now. I went outside, and while it's supposed to snow tomorrow, I noticed how beautiful the tree was. So small. And I heard someone call them little glimmers. And I really try to find the little glimmers in every single day. Even when Elizabeth is having a rougher day, she's been having, some increased health problems. over the past year or so, actually a couple years. And that can be scary and that can be difficult. And you feel the clouds kind of start to come back in again. And they never fully go away, but that's okay. I can still look at a tree. I can still go outside and go for a hike. And that makes me happy. Even if it's something really simple, like just closing my eyes and listen to her laugh. For just a little bit. It really is enough to reset me and make me happy. Yeah, I think, and I know that that's probably not traditional advice and like how to be happy, which is it's okay not to be happy for a little while, because sometimes you have to go through it to get over it, right? And find your way out on the other side. But you know, I do things to help. I like to stay fit. I run. Elizabeth and I run together. Or we used to.
Nice.
Yeah. We would do like half marathons. We did a marathon once. That was a good time. She really likes that because she likes to be kind of snuggled inside the little jogger. But, you know, just getting outside, enjoying nature. I like being with my friends. We do a lot of dancing at my house, a lot of dance.
We actually have we're going to go live to a video right now. Big surprise for you.
Yeah. For some reason, Elizabeth thinks that I'm the best singer and dancer in the entire universe.
Oh, nice.
I'm not.
Well, that's such a juxtaposition as to the not cool mom.
Oh,
right?
I'm not cool.
Right. You get that, but then you're the cool dancer. Like,
yeah, she thinks I'm the best. Like she will only laugh and listen to the music if I'm singing it, which is odd. I've had to learn a lot of weird songs for her pleasure. Even my husband, when I was pregnant with her, asked me to please not sing to the fetus in case tone deafness was inherited. So, you know, joke's on him. Like, she loves it. So
that's great.
So it's always karaoke night at the Watt House.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I see a new fundraiser budding right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Good times.
Talk to us a little bit, if you would. You've been so open and sharing, and we really appreciate that. And you know, I think Cassie and I are half joking about writing down all of your really great perspectives and one-liners, because these types of things, they don't leave us, right? They're so important as we think about our responsibility of crafting stories and sharing about this disease. We know that awareness is one of our challenges in front of us. But I wanted to ask you about your hope for Elizabeth, your hope for the mitochondrial disease community overall. You seem to have such a grounded perspective, and I'd love for you to kind of share more globally about your hope for the mito community.
I mean, obviously, for the mito community, I hope treatment, I hope cure. That is pretty much unsaid, right? It's what we all hope for. But above all that, I hope peace. I hope calm. I hope for partially sunny days. Yeah. I just hope that we can all come together to affect change, to be the voice for our family members. Or if you have mito yourself, you know, how can we help you? How can we support you? I hope you have more happy days than bad. So, and the same for Elizabeth. I hope she has friends. Of course, I hope that she lives a long, happy life. And if she doesn't, I hope that the time that she has with me, she's happy. So.
I typically ask our guests at this point of the podcast if there's anything else they'd like to share, but I can't think of a more powerful way to wrap our conversation today than this focus and charge on happiness. And boy, it's such I used the word juxtaposition before, but it's not a word we throw around enough in what we do with our daily battle to help fight this disease, which pales in comparison to the daily battle that you and our patient families face. But you used the word joy earlier, and it's a way I describe to my board of trustees when they ask me how things are going. I often catch myself saying, I'm happy. I'm having fun doing this work, because part of it is, I think, a responsibility we feel to make sure we're bringing some of those partially sunny days to our patient families. But I'll tell you this, what allows us to do that is having folks like you who share that type of perspective. So I want to personally thank you for everything you've shared today, and certainly lighting a little fire under Cassie and myself today. We're going to go create like 10 new campaigns after this call. I have a feeling. So
well, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you so much for just giving us all voices. You know, it's been amazing. And to your point, I don't know if you know, but Elizabeth's middle name is Joy. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How
So
cool is that?
Kismet. And I think, you know, it takes our entire community. So I'm honored to be part of the campaign, to be chosen to speak for the community. There's so many wonderful people doing so many wonderful good things that I'm excited. So thank you so much. This was an amazing experience.
It was so great to have you today, Emma. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, Cassie, all kidding aside, I know we joked about it a couple of times, but I've got 3 Post-it notes full of the notes we've already talked about, right? Coming out of the darkness. And, you know, one thing we didn't get to was this interesting point in the Watt family's life where this diagnosis comes at the same time of starting a career in nursing. And just what an interesting perspective that must have been as well, too.
I mean, gosh, I can't imagine being a brand new mom, having a brand new job. All of that is already very daunting.
Right. Those lists of life's major stressors you see on the internet, right? New job, sick child.
Yeah.
Those are at the top. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but just like chasing joy, she's Emma's amazing. She's got so many great nuggets, like you were saying, that I've written down that I feel like I need to be rewriting everything that we've already written for this campaign. So thank you, Emma, for giving me more work to do.
There you go. A shameless little plug, though, from our social media manager to be making sure you're following us on Facebook and signing up for our emails, because it's where you're going to hear the story, Elizabeth's story. If you follow our social media, you're going to see the story there too. And the Watts are generous with their time and sharing their story, but they represent so many patient families who have stepped up and say, not only am I finding a way to work through this mitochondrial disease journey, I'm also making the conscious decision to share my story. So in the hope that it might help even one other person out there, one other person who might be Googling that night and says, that's me too. Right. And we didn't get to it enough today, but of course, we always plug to visit umdf.org to see the myriad resources that are available to our patient families, to connect with virtual support groups, to connect with one of our ambassadors, all the programs in our support and education standpoint. Shameless plug, mitochondrial medicine. It's the opportunity to come together and meet other families as well, too. So a special thanks again to our guest today, Emma Watt. Cassie, you filled in admirably today. Maybe we'll have a vote off for you and Phil. We'll kick him off the island. We'll get you on more often. Dr. Phil, please join me next month, though. You're not off for the next month. Dr. Phil will be back next month as we're going to connect with our mitochondrial medicine course chairs next month to talk a little bit more about the programming coming up here at the end of June. So subscribe to this YouTube channel to see this episode and many, many more. And go fast, and let's find some more happy days. Thanks, everyone.